We will now move on to our keynote address. This session will be moderated by Ms. Etta Wong, Director of USC Hong Kong. Ms. Etta Wong is the Director of USC Hong Kong International Office, Strategic and Global Initiatives. In her capacity, she is responsible to work collaboratively with all USC professional schools for admissions, academic programs, alumni, and parents' development. She's also the primary ambassador to develop the university's relationship with both private and public sectors in Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area. She will be joined by Professor Anthony Borquez, who is the Assistant Professor of Clinical Entrepreneurship at the Martial Arts of Business from the University of Southern California. We will have a Q&A for the session, which you may simply scan the QR code and type in your questions during this discussion. Ms. Wong and Professor Borquez, the stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning to all of you in Hong Kong and Asia, and good evening in the United States, Canada. My name is Etta. I'm the Director of Hong Kong office for USC. So today we have great speaker and topic. The topic that we are going to talk about will be esports, the future trends. Anthony Borquez will be our today's keynote speaker. What we will be talking about will be the current trends of esports and gaming in the US and the world, how emerging technologies such as big data, AI, machine learning, and even now, the pandemic 2020 that we are encountering right now will make the new game changer. I'm very pleased to introduce my colleague, Anthony, my Trojan colleague from LA. So let me give you his experience background. He is the founder and CEO of Grab Games, a digital entertainment company founded in 2010. The company specializes in VR, AR, mobile games, app development, freemium games, and social games. Prior to Grab, Anthony was the founder and CEO of Label Interactive and Spatial Technologies, both a mobile software company, which later being acquired by leading industry players. Besides his exciting entrepreneurial journey, Anthony is active in esports. He himself is the board member of the Team Envy, one of the world's leading esports organizations, winner of 2016 Esports Team of the Year. Besides this, he is also the adjunct faculty at USC. He currently teaches technology entrepreneurship, video game production at USC Business and Engineering schools. He's definitely a loyal Trojan. He received his bachelor, master, and doctoral degree all from USC. While we are waiting for his presentation, please feel free to type up your questions anytime in the Q&A, and we will come back to you after his presentation. I'm not really a gamer. I remember my time when I played Nintendo. That was many, many years ago. But I'm sure that technologies change with the VR and AR and how gaming will evolve. I will now let our keynote speaker answer all these questions. Please join me to welcome Anthony now.
Thank you so much. I am hoping that you can see my screen over here. I have an indicator that the screen is on, so I hope you do see that. And it is a pleasure to be here to talk to you about esports, future trends, and also talk a little bit about the game industry. And it was a very exciting announcement to hear about the Esports Fellowship. If we talk about trends, that's hopefully a trend that we'll continue to see is education adopting esports and other forms of interactive entertainment. It almost reminds me of the game industry in 2003 when we taught our first class on video game production, and 17 years later, games and education has become quite a global phenomenon. But yes, thank you again for the introduction and talking about my background. I did want to say, I got into the game industry 20 years ago because I wanted to build games. Back then, there wasn't an educational track. I actually wanted to go make big console games, but at the time, it's really hard to break in the industry without a lot of experience. I'm sure a lot of viewers here, a lot of students, whoever it is, you may want to break in, but you need some kind of skill set. You need some kind of way of breaking in. My route to get in the game industry, I leveraged mobile technology. I had some background in mobile. I didn't have console experience, so I thought maybe we could put games on mobile phones. So we were really early at it. And the challenge was I started this new company. I was going to raise money, but I can never raise a full round of financing because most of the investment community didn't believe that people would play games on phones because how small the screens were and the processing limitations. And I kept grinding that business out for 3-4 years. We started making money, but reinvesting it back in and trying to raise money the whole time. The company was later acquired by Konami Digital Entertainment. But I think the story is we're all trying to find ways of breaking in the industry, and it's all about grit and perseverance and trying to find unique ways to do something that's a little bit different. So I hope that's one message that people take away from this talk, because esports is right at the cusp of where I was 17 years ago trying to break in the industry. There's so many things happening and so many opportunities. I hope we shed some light on what some of those could be. Some of the games I've worked on, as Etta mentioned, being in the industry for a while, you span platforms. It's been console games, mobile games. We've done VR games as of late, and now we're working on PlayStation 5 games. And being very, very active in esports. I've run an esports fund where we've invested in 12 different companies, and I've been involved with an esports team, a few of them over the years. And I do want to let you know, we have a special guest tonight that has made himself available. This guest is a professional, was a professional gamer, and has built and run one of the most exciting esports organizations in the world. And when we start talking about specifics around running esports organizations, growing esports organizations and opportunities there, we will be talking directly with one of the world leaders. So that'll be an exciting coming up in about 10 or 15 minutes. But real quick, I want to talk a little bit about our program at USC. We have an entire division around games. The whole school has really rallied around this concept of USC Games. The people I'm about to introduce to you, they have this entrepreneurial mindset. They had this thirst to get in the games industry, and they've all used their creativity, their entrepreneurship, to create products and really get traction in the market. Here's Asher. I'm not sure if any of you played Threes. This was a game I loved, a casual game that really took off. Asher was one of our students, but really had this creative nature. Kelly Santiago, as part of her master's thesis, she partnered with Genova Chen. They built 3 games that when they were in school, they signed a deal with PlayStation. And again, this is years back, and it might even be a little bit easier today to get some of these publishing deals. But just because you're in school does not mean that you can't build product that could reach commercial audiences. They ended up building 3. The game Journey was Game of the Year in 2012, up against a lot of AAA titles. So really proud of their creativity and their vision into gaming. And I just mentioned Genova. Genova was actually one of our teaching assistants when he first started at USC, a creative genius. His latest game is called Sky. Maybe some of you have played that already. But Genova came over from China and spent time in our department and really left a lasting impact. I believe one of the things that he has is this great artistic expression and also this way of conveying emotion in games. That was really what his passion was about. And of course, a lot of you out there are familiar with Riot Games and League of Legends. If you really think about League of Legends, it has really catapulted esports over the years with this large player base. We were fortunate to have Brandon as a student. I had him actually as a freshman and as a senior. He took our first class on video game production, and then 2 years out of school, launched Riot Games. And the rest was history. But a couple other people I want to talk to you about. Ari was actually one of my students. She was a designer. She did incredible work in the classroom. We hired her to come work at our game company as a UI, UX designer. But on the side, she would stream Halo. She was a streamer early into those days. We had the pleasure of her working with us for a couple years. She left and went to go start her streaming career, and she is one of the biggest brands in the industry. She goes by Ammunition. Here's a shot of her, but you know, there is this amazing opportunity for females, for males, for whoever, if you're able to take your passion, be authentic. And she has built an incredible business for herself. There's also Sean Plott, one of our students, who is a content creator. Sean, he also is at a lot of events. He covers lots of events, goes by Day 9. So Sean also took his passion for gaming and was able to use some of those communication style skills, content creation skills, and was able to kind of find his niche in the esports industry. So again, a lot of different people that have passions for games or esports and finding different ways of building your careers around it. We also recently launched a varsity team at USC that's playing esports, and we do see the pathway for students to come to USC on scholarships for gaming in the future. And we're starting to see that happen already. But a couple things before we jump into our really deep conversation around esports management. Let's talk about just a few quick trends. First off, just so we're all on the same page here, some of you that are new to esports, if we take a look at the esports ecosystem, you could see that we have, at the very far left, we have teams, Fnatic, Envy, Cloud9. These are all the teams that are playing games, that are competing for prize money, that are streaming, that are catering to these large audiences that are following them. So in addition to the games, we also have the leagues and tournaments. We have professional leagues like the Overwatch League and the League of Legends Championship Series, the Call of Duty League, and we have ESL and these other players that are running tournaments. Then of course, there's the viewing platforms like Twitch, YouTube, and a bunch more that are coming to the market. And of course, we're delivering all this experience to the fans. The stakeholders that are involved with esports include publishers, but also brands and advertisers who's trying to generate reach and get after this audience. And then finally, people that are investing in teams, tools, technology, companies like Bitcraft. So this is it. This is in a nutshell. It's much more than just games. Esports is about tournaments. It's about streaming. It's about content creation. It's about advertising. It's about investing. And of course, there's the option of building games and publishing games. But I think there is, what this presents as an opportunity for many of you to jump in at various capacities. This is a quick slide I want to share with you regarding pre-COVID in February. We had earmarked consumer spending that we were hoping to stay consistent through September. And you could see what's happened here in March. Gaming has obviously exploded with people at home, people spending more time on digital platforms. And we're seeing just this massive surge, which also means people are viewing games as well. If you take a look at the total share of entertainment investment, there's been a 3% increase in 2020 from total time. And then also a 4% increase in total share. This is of all the entertainment that people are consuming or purchasing. And then finally, we have almost 80% of US consumers that are playing video games. That's up 6% from 2019, 246 million gamers, up from 228 million last year. And they're playing mobile games. You can see mobile still on the rise. PC is up, consoles up, and then others would be platforms like virtual reality, augmented reality, et cetera. So these are just some high-level stats that we're seeing that obviously Etta had talked a little bit about the COVID situation, but we are seeing opportunities that have arisen for gamers and people in esports. A couple other things I wanted to pull up and talk about. One of the big trends is you no longer have to start a game 10 years ago and spend all this time building an audience and investing years and years of money into these games. With things like Among Us, you could have smaller teams. You could leverage platforms like Discord, platforms like Twitch to reach a massive audience where you could get 100 million users or 100 million downloads in a relatively short period of time. If you look at that entire ecosystem that I shared with you before. So this is a really exciting trend. We've also seen it with a game like Fall Guys. Not only are these IPs being streamed, but if you think about how they're being played, there's cross-play where you could play on a PC and pick up on a Switch and maybe play on mobile. Fortnite really has done an exceptional job at that, but it's cross-play, it's cross-platform. So people are now developers. You don't have to have separate teams that are building for PlayStation 5, Xbox, PC, mobile. You're able to leverage these game engines to be able to write once and deploy everywhere. I mean, obviously with some optimizations, but that exists today. And then of course, progression. You could pick up and play from any device. So that's really been one of the trends that we're seeing that's been extremely successful in the industry, which is also adding to this extended playtime from consumers. And of course, viewing. We talked about distribution. Among Us had an incredible lift when it was picked up on Twitch. Same thing with YouTube. We have these platforms now that are attracting audience and really engaging them. Hard not to look at cloud gaming too as another trend. What I find really interesting with cloud gaming is if you look at that use case with YouTube, a streamer or somebody from a professional esports team, they could be playing a game and the ability for a viewer to jump in, download, or not even download, but play instantly with somebody. It's a whole new level of discovery and it's going to drive that much more engagement. We're not sure how much yet. It's still very early, but this is definitely something on the horizon that we're seeing with Google, with Sony, with Microsoft, with Amazon, with NVIDIA, just to name a few. But cloud gaming is certainly a trend that you should all stay close to and keep an eye on. And of course, publishing opportunities. What Epic has done, and they have this free game of the day, free game of the week program, and just providing consumers more value to use this as a destination. And of course, there's Steam and a wide series of app stores from all the different platforms as well. So publishing is becoming more prolific. I would also say user-generated content. These game engines, as well as tools that companies provide. If you think about League of Legends and you think about the Dota category, being able to mod games, to be able to create new experiences for player bases, it's really continuing to evolve. And the ability to use these tools, a lot of you that are in school, a lot of you want to pick up some new skills. Being able to jump into Unreal, being able to jump into Unity allows you to create experiences that rival experiences of bigger companies, because no longer you could use this ray tracing technology, for example, as a way to really, have stunning visuals inside your game. And I really want, this is probably the last example I'll bring up before I want to introduce our guest speaker, is interactive viewing. Think about how the viewing experience could be better. This is a screenshot from last night's Thursday night NFL football game on Twitch. What you'll see here is there was a Halo, there's a Halo advertisement, and I'll get to that in a second. But what's different from more of the linear programming is, notice here on the left of the screen, you now have something called streamer standings. You have an overlay of interactivity. So as you're watching a football game, instead of it just being static, you could say, for example, will the quarterback throw for more than 50 yards on this drive? And there's live polling. And if you think about that from an esports perspective, you're going to be able to have a very interesting way of engaging with your consumers. You'll have a very interesting way. Let me kind of jump back here. Sorry, things slipped there. You'll find a much better way of getting people further engaged, much stickier experience. This was the example I left you on. But again, what you're seeing here on the left, this panel here is an interactive extension, which drives all this interactivity and more value to the consumer. I want to share with you one quick video here. This is, and those of you that are interested in getting into the esports or gaming industry, this is Twitch, but notice this is a product that we built and launched recently in support of the Halo game. It's a mini game that people that are streaming Halo, you could play a mini game on top of the overlay driven by the streamer, but again, driving more engagement, providing a new, unique way to keep fans interactive. So keep thinking about these new channels, all these opportunities, and how you could provide more value for all these new innovations that we're seeing in the space. Let me see if I could skip off it. And lastly, classrooms. I saw this recently last month. Generation Esports, they're creating 25 gaming labs in high schools nationwide. They're building, in partnership with the Army National Guard, they're building custom gaming labs where students are promoting esports and being able to engage and play together. And hopefully we'll start seeing this on a more global basis. But this article is available. You guys should check it out and see how you could reference this for other types of programs you might want to implement across, whether it's middle schools or high schools. But let's jump right into esports organizations. Let's talk about what are some of the trends, talk about what are some of the business aspects, what are we seeing at the ground level from esports teams, some of the challenges they're overcoming, but also the big opportunities that are ahead of them. The guest speaker that I'm going to bring to the table today is from Team Envy, who is one of the leading worldwide esports teams. As I mentioned before, this person was a professional esports player. His game was Call of Duty, and it's only appropriate that this video I'm going to share with you is from them winning the Call of Duty World Championships earlier this year. So let me go ahead and play this video for you. It's just under a minute, but at the very end, you'll start to see the team that won this.
I believe in you guys more than any team I've ever believed in before. Let's fucking get these things.
Is this happening again? 2 versus 4 it was for Empire. Now it is 2 versus 2. Is this happening again? Are you kidding me? Both players take damage. The challenge comes in from Shotzi. The flood has gotten here from Empire. The spawns haven't flipped, but they've got enough kills to get phase spawning in the back and get into the point. This is great from Empire. Yeah, and now they're going to trap them too. Time retake for a phase. First blood to Illy. Let's go, baby! Hey, let's go! My boy!
dude. Oh my God, dude. Let's go. You guys are the best in the world.
So lots of excitement there from Team Envy. Their team is called the Dallas Empire, and that was footage from winning the Call of Duty World Championships very recently. So with that said, it is my pleasure now to introduce you to Mike Ruffal, also known as Hastro, a fan of the Houston Astros from years back, but former professional Call of Duty player, owner, founder of Team Envy. He has multiple teams underneath the Envy brand, including the Dallas Fuel, which is an Overwatch team, the Dallas Empire, which plays Call of Duty, and there's other games, Counter-Strike, Halo, Valorant, Smash Brothers, and Rocket League. He's based out of Dallas, Texas, and excited to have you here, Mike.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I know that we don't have a ton of time, but we want to talk a little bit about just management, ownership. Maybe if we could talk a little bit about your personal journey of how you got into esports and how you became how you founded Envy and have built it to what it is today. So if you could spend a minute or two on that.
Sure. Like many people, I think gaming it started as a hobby for me. I just really enjoyed playing the games that I grew up with, and eventually I stumbled upon a Call of Duty game that I really enjoyed, and I played a lot of the game. And I will say that the in-game technology advancements in ranking algorithms really changed my life, because what ended up happening was I realized through the in-game's ranking system that I was one of the best players in the world, and so I decided to take it to the next level and begin to participate in tournaments. So like larger, bigger scaled tournaments that were more organized. And so as soon as I started competing, I started winning those tournaments, and there was a little prize money involved and so on. So I was able to focus full time. And this is 15 years ago when I first got started. And so I continued to play, and a lot of people, it turned out, wanted to see the best players in the world play as more organized competition started to happen. And we grew enough in terms of a brand, and attracted enough audience that sponsors started to knock on our door and wanted to advertise with our team. And so from that point forward, we started to create a business. If somebody is willing to spend money and create revenue for you for a service, then you have a real business that you can start. And so we formed a business, and we started to expand using the capital that we received from sponsorships into other games. And at the time, we never spent the money or on things that we couldn't grow the team with. Every dollar we spent was to expand the team. I didn't even pay myself for the first 8 years. So I was constantly trying to build a business from this, and I think that's why we've turned out to be one of the premier organizations in the world that survive today.
Wow. So Mike, how different is it today versus when you got started? Because I've noticed in the last 4 years, there has been a massive surge in esports investments from professional organizations to venture capitalists, but not a couple $1 million investments. We're talking 20, 30, $40 million per team. So can you talk a little bit about what's really the driver behind this growth and the excitement?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's all driven by audience, right? I think without an audience, you really don't have much there to invest around. And because we're garnering such a large audience so quickly in esports, the scale has begun to move faster, and we're starting to scale faster as more capital gets infused into the ecosystem. And so the industry is really seeing a lot of growth right now, because I would say within the last 5 years, we've seen an enormous amount of capital get invested into esports. And I think a lot of people were nervous about when that happened, but to be quite honest, we're seeing now kind of the fruits of that. Typically takes a couple of years to see that capital really become to take an effect on the industry. And so, we're now seeing continued audience growth. We're now seeing technology and software being applied to the industry to help grow and foster the audience and the fan experience. We're starting to see more connectivity with a mainstream audience through various media outlets, linear television, and so on. So there are certainly lots of tailwinds happening in esports, and a lot of it is due to the capital being invested behind it.
Got it. Um, so another related question: with all this competition, and you guys being one of the top teams in the world, what do you think about the future? When we think about trends, what do you think about Envy and how you're going to differentiate and how you guys will be one of the successful franchises long term? What are you guys thinking about now? What are things that you're doing to put you ahead?
Yeah, I mentioned years, taking years to see the effects. We started really deploying, I would say, large amounts of capital back in 2016. And so I would say just in 2021, it took us probably 5 years. Our organization specifically will be really blazing the trail in esports in a lot of ways. One of the things that we're starting to see is kind of localization and regionalization of esports teams specifically, so that we are essentially taking some of the traditional sports entertainment model where you have professional sports teams and they're local and regionalized. We're taking a bit of that element and applying that to esports. So I can tell you at Envy, one of the ways we're doing this is by creating public-private opportunity with municipalities to build an arena and to build a large venue. But it's not just a venue; it's also, a full-on real estate development built around an esports arena where our teams will play, where esports competition can happen, where amateur, semi-professional level, youth, scholastic esports can all congregate. So we're very close to announcing our plans for that. It's been a 2-year process, and I think what you'll see from our organization in terms of real estate, you'll see many other esports organizations strive to do as well. And that's just one of the many trends that you'll see coming about. There's going to be a lot of regionalization and localization of esports. Maybe it will take a little bit longer for there to be widespread teams, but we're certainly doing that with Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League, which are two very ambitious, the most ambitious leagues in all of esports. And we're excited to be a part of that.
So this, again, when you think about an organization, when you think about a team, a lot of times, any business, you need to have a great market, you need to have a great product, you need to have a great team. What's your philosophy on teams? Like, how do you find great players to play, the professional players, and then on top of that, how do you find great people to help you manage the business?
Yeah, sure. So I'll answer the second one first, the second part of that question, which is, great people in your infrastructure, right? Our organization specifically is probably investing at the very high end of infrastructure, meaning we're investing into our management team, we're investing into our staff, we're investing into facilities and venues, like I mentioned. So we're building a lot of infrastructure for North Texas and Texas, the state of Texas here in the U.S. We're building a lot of that infrastructure now, and have been for the last couple of years. And you'll probably see a lot of teams who took the full-on approach on content and merchandising and sponsorships. We're certainly participating in all of those things, but every team is different in the way that they're approaching their business. And I can just tell you, for us, we're really excited about some of these things that we've been working on for a couple of years that are truly groundbreaking and trailblazing. Now, in terms of players, we're out to find the absolute best players in the world. So it's like finding a needle in a haystack. It really is, because hundreds of millions of people play games. As you mentioned, there are over 2 billion people who play games digitally in some form or another. And we have to go out and find the very best players out there. So it's a very daunting task. We do a lot of scouting. Our team operations department is always watching even the most amateur competitions on the streaming platforms from all over the world at all hours of the day so we can find the very best talent out there around the world. And one of the great things that we also have access to in the gaming industry is real-time analytics in most of the games, statistics from players inside the games themselves. So we can actually track, every action that a player makes in the games that he's playing from home or she's playing from home, and we can get a lot of data to look at. And so we do a lot of that. We watch a lot of competition. We search through a lot of data. We also try to understand the mentality and psychology of each player and how they'll fit into our team and create a team dynamic.
Got it. I know that we want to leave some time for questions, but let me ask one more really quick, more around the product side. I mean, as you mentioned before, you have to create a large audience, and then you cater to that audience, not just from playing games and having them watch, but just generating content. Like, what are you a content company, and if so, what are the requirements for professional organizations like yours to constantly be addressing that issue of content creation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's an interesting one with our organization, because we always took the approach of, let's win as much as possible and let's gain a fan base that way, and let's just be the best team in the world, which we successfully have done. But I think there is this other side that is content that is very important to our growth as a business and to the growth of esports in general. And we have just recently created a full-on larger division for content within our company, a much larger division, and are now applying the brunt of our force there to grow our reach through content. And so while you have to kind of pick and choose your battles when you're investing capital and deploying it at this level. And I think we took an approach where we built infrastructure first, and now I think our next phase in growing Envy is certainly to create a lot of content, work with a lot of content creators, and we feel like it's almost plug and play at any moment when you want to do that and invest capital behind it. So it's one of the most important things we can be doing as an esports team and a company, is entertaining an audience and making sure that we're creating enough compelling content for them to want to continue to follow our team.
Great. Etta, I think maybe I want to be sensitive to timing here. I know that the schedule said 6:15, and that's in 8 minutes. If there's any questions that you want to ask myself, and Mike's here as well, I'm sure he'll stick around to ask any questions regarding the team size. The team side, let's be happy to entertain those now if that works.
Sure, Anthony. Thank you so much. I think it's a very insightful sharing. Yeah, I do receive a lot of questions, so why don't I start my question first? It seems that you are quite optimistic about the esports industry and development, even during the pandemic. But I'm just wondering, because esports usually was taking place in huge venues for the excitement during the tournament. But with the past 12 years, we all, of course, stay at home. And I think predictably, in the next maybe more years, we're going to stay from home. How do you really see that will impact the format of esports? Do you think that people will then get used to just watch the game live from home instead of we come back to the big venue for the esports?
Yeah, well, I'm sure Michael will give you some specifics about their experience. Actually, Envy hosted one of the first Overwatch League away games last year, which is where the industry was headed, where teams would actually host esports tournaments and matches in their hometowns. But it really does feel like, if you look at the overall macro numbers, a lot of the growth is in the online viewership. If you're looking at platforms like Twitch and YouTube and even chatter on Twitter, it really feels like, yes, it's great to have a live experience and sell tickets, but when you have a League of Legends event with 100 million people, maybe 0.1% is there live, or it's not or is physically at the venue. But again, we think over time, as COVID starts to evolve, that we'll get to a place where people will be comfortable to come back to an arena. But Mike, you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on live attendance and how do you continue to grow the business?
Yeah, we're actually very fortunate for this pandemic to happen in a time where we've built out relatively good internet infrastructure around the globe, and it's getting internet speeds are getting faster, and so therefore our games are able to be competed upon on the internet. And I would say it's not ideal for us because we want the highest level of competition live, but we are able to continue to compete and produce broadcasts and serve our sponsors and do a lot of the things that traditional mainstream sports could not do with all their players being at home. So we have a really big advantage there, to be honest. And as Anthony said, the audience is still there, and in many ways are continuing to do what they've always done because the majority of that audience, like Anthony mentioned, is actually the digital online broadcast audience, and we're connected to way more people through the broadcast than we are in the live venue. So we're very optimistic about our ability to get through COVID, no matter how long it takes. To be quite honest, we were just beginning to produce live event experiences. We had only gotten through two. We were one of the first organizations in the world. We were the first organization in the world to host a live home game, an official home game in a league versus another team. It's actually in the picture that you had up of me. We had 5,000 fans per day come in, sold out crowd here in Dallas to watch our first esports event. So we can survive without those events, because I'll tell you, in the early days we don't make a tremendous amount of money off the live events just yet. We are essentially breaking even on those events, and in the future we will certainly have profitable events. But in the early years we were having to do things like lease an arena, that we didn't own. So we had a lot of outside costs that we would consolidate within our company as we continue to invest into things that we would own and operate. So I think for esports organizations, we are certainly able to get through the COVID pandemic relatively unscathed.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm sure that we all want to pass through the pandemic as soon as possible. I got quite a lot of questions regarding the negative stigma of esports, particularly Chinese parents. If we play video games, it regarded to something not really positive, and people, particular parents, will say that why don't you spend more time on your homework? Of course, that things seems to be changing. But the stigma is still quite strong. So this question I want to ask Anthony and Mike, do you also have this kind of resistance when you indulge yourself into the esports industry? The other question is, from your experience in teaching and collaborating with education, how to start with that, how you actually convince academic institutions to collaborate with esports, and what kind of positive impact for that kind of collaboration?
By the way, let me address the one question. Mike has a young child. I have a 12-year-old and a 20-year-old, but my 12-year-old is an active gamer, plays regularly every day, and has aspirations of being a professional player, right? So this kid is on that track. But it got to the point last year where we weren't monitoring it too much, and he was playing anywhere from 6 to 10 hours a day, probably, if I had to judge my analytics right. It got to a point where, yeah, it did become an issue. And what we had to do is, and I'm also monitoring what type of games he's playing, but we did come in and had to implement a pretty strict policy around, for me, it was like every hour in the game, you spend an equal amount of hour either outside or doing something else that was unrelated to it. So, for me, I figured out something that works really well with my child, but it's not just him. I would say it's every one of his friends has this similar issue with their parents. So I don't think this is something just with China or with any other place in the world. I think a lot of kids all over the world, I think all parents are kind of facing this challenge. And at USC, we're doing a lot of interesting things where we have a lot of students we have this Minecraft project right now where there's a bunch of students that are recreating the entire university in Minecraft. And people love to play Minecraft, but now they're using these tools and they're using this modding to be able to offer the people that can't visit USC to provide them a new way of touring campus during this COVID time. So, I mean, we're constantly looking at how do we build games, not just for the sake of pure entertainment, but also to where it could be for rehabilitation, serious games, games for causes, whatever it is. We're a big part of our program at USC is trying to find those different types of use cases. And I know Mike is obviously thinking of other ways within his own community where they could have a more positive impact with games.
Yeah, and I think balance is everything. If you're a concerned parent, there are two things. One, balance is important. And so, like Anthony said, creating a policy with your son or daughter is very important to establish ground rules to the amount of game time they can have to create a balance. And number two, I think there are lots of negative stigmas around gaming and esports from parents still. But I think it's just about educating about the positives of gaming as well. There are so many positive outcomes for your child playing a lot of video games. There's from increase in cognitive ability to reflexes to social awareness because you're constantly typically playing with other people when you're playing multiplayer games. And there's also this there's got to be some value to the fact that your child loves what they're doing, so they're happy. And so you also can't discount the happiness that video games bring your child. So all of those things combined, I think, maybe there's a bit of too much worry from parents, but there's also this inherent need to police your children's game time and what their aspirations are with their games.
Yeah, one of the big issues that we're seeing on a global basis is this issue of loneliness. I mean, this is a massive issue across all over the world, right? And what we are seeing is within games like Fortnite, I saw some studies done there where it's not just about playing the games with the friends, but a lot of the kids during this isolated period, they have a sense of community there. It's actually a place to go, like an arcade or somewhere like a playground after school. For a lot of the kids, it's not just playing a game, but it's also a social experience for them to express themselves in different ways, just digitally, since they're kind of in this COVID state. So I think there's a lot of positives too around that sense of social, but with kids, a lot of these privileges could easily get abused. And that's why we need to have like policies in place.
I'm sure that is really impressive, particularly you talk about even promoting esports in the high school and also all these successful examples at USC. Even during when they are studying, they already attract capital to invest in their games. So my next question is for the students who are interested in the esports. What are your recommendations, how they start with it? If they are not video gamers, you said that there may be other talents on communications, even on accounting, events management, that may possibly be participating in the esport. But it seems we don't really have a conventional way of developing or starting this career. Do you have any recommendations for our students?
Yeah, I'll give just a couple examples. I think it's even more optimistic of breaking in esports than it is in games, because you could take a lot of these academic disciplines around. It could be accounting, it could be real estate. Mike just talked about one of the big trends is there's going to be a push into owning real estate and building stadiums and having that expertise available as well. I would say on our School of Communications, the Annenberg School of Communications, you need brand managers that understand how to give out a message. You need brand managers that understand PR, crisis management. There's so many of these skill sets out there, that esports organizations need in order to thrive. Think about all this fundraising and having analysts being able to look at the markets, to look at competitive analysis, doing these business model canvases and all these instruments that we use to value companies and markets. So I really think that there's so many different ways of contributing into esports. And I think Mike could probably talk about from his own experience, if he could get 3 interns right now, if he could have 3 interns, could you maybe tell us what you would want them to do based upon needs that you have in your organization?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've now grown the company to a size where we have a very specific departments, and with a hierarchy and structure within those departments, like any mid to large size business would need. And so I would say, if I had to choose 3 interns, we're looking for 1 in team operations, we're looking for 1 in content, and we're looking for 1 in sales and marketing right now. Those would probably be my 3 specific areas where we want to grow young staff members into senior staff members in those 3 sectors right now. Those are our 3 most important areas.
Mike, what are you looking for from somebody in team operations? What's the role, what's the responsibility, and what's kind of like the ideal background?
Sure. It's it would be player management, talent management, coordination. Think logistics of everything that we do as a team. Travel, booking the travel, booking time for content. It's completely managing all of the talent that you have and all the players that you have, but also all of the practice regiment and scheduling for that, and anything that we have to do to either compete or create content or deliver for our partners and sponsors. So we're all of that encompassed under a team operations department.
Got it.
Got it.
Cool.
I will send my email to you and then promote to all the students under APRU for these exciting opportunities. I think we are running out of time. Before we close, can Anthony and Mike give a very brief insight about how you see the esports industry in the next 5 years? What will be the boom?
You want me to take that one?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned localization, regionalization is going to be more prominent as we continue to move along. A lot of esports organizations taking territory and establishing themselves as a regional hub for esports. I think you're also going to see technology and software come into play in a much larger way across the entire esports industry, whether it be through broadcast media, whether it be through analytics and data science for teams, whether it be for content creation. Technology and software is going to be a major player for us in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about more legitimacy around esports, as it compares against other forms of entertainment like traditional sports. I think right now for this industry to really grow and reach its height is if you think about media rights. Mike talked about that earlier. One of the main reasons why this large audience with this massive engagement doesn't generate the same revenues as traditional sports is I think there has to be more education to advertisers and networks, and people have to really see the value of what this audience is all about. And I'm thinking we're getting there. I think we made a big improvement over the last 3 or 4 years, but I think in the next 4 or 5 years, with an Olympics coming up, hopefully there's going to be an esports presence at the next Olympics, maybe not this year, but in 4 more years. And I just think we're slowly getting all these big advertisers really educated on what esports is, what this culture is all about. And hopefully we'll be at that point where we are as competitive in terms of the viewership and the channels and the different networks that we're broadcasting at.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm really thrilled speaking to you, Anthony and Mike in LA. On behalf of APRU and Cyberport, let's give a big applause to both of them of their insightful sharing. So to conclude, these two speakers from the esports industry are really optimistic about the esports trends. We don't see really a downturn during the pandemic, particularly with the emerging technologies of home mobile and all the devices. Not only esports can now take place in the big venue, but people can also watch the live stream, participate in the esports with all the devices. The speaker, Anthony, also talked about esports is not just about playing games. So it's good news to students, particularly for those who have a negative stigma. Esports industry is really all-rounded. They need talents on communication, team collaboration, marketing, events, all kinds of expertise. But I think the most important thing is that you have to be authentic and really passionate in the esports industry. To conclude, esports will be becoming uptrend, particularly the Olympic is coming up, and we look forward to more success of the esports industry, and for APRU and also the esports fellows program, hopefully will also help remove the negative stigma of the esports development. So I enjoy really speaking to the speakers today, and I hope you do the same. And thank you very much for watching this keynote session. Thank you, and have a good day.